Well, guys, we are back on another article today. So, I have this up here because I already looked at an article from the website Living Writer. And I thought this logo looked familiar, so yes, I did look at one. It was called Avoid These Fantasy Writing Cliches. And it was a kind of a ridiculous video because they said that these 5 fantasy cliches, they introduced 5 fantasy writing cliches, and they said that you should definitely avoid these, steer clear of them completely. And I thought that was just ridiculous. So the 5 that they had were, let's see if I remember them, the chosen one in the prophecy, the good versus the bad, and the damsels in distress, the magical artifact, and fantasy jargon. And what they meant with fantasy jargon was, I did agree with this one, was that it's just too much fantasy jargon is what they said to avoid. Sort of pepper it throughout is kind of what they were implying, and I did agree with that part of the article. But the other parts, it was like completely avoid the chosen one. Really? So anyway, that was that first video. You can go and check it out. It's already up, I'm sure. Today, we're going to look at what they consider are the most overused fantasy tropes. Top 10. This article was published on February 15, 2024. So just this year, by somebody called Eugene Doak, not sure. Eugene has written an article of the most overused fantasy tropes top 10. So based on what we know of what fantasy writing cliches that they don't like, I'm assuming I'm going to see the chosen one, the damsels in distress, the magical artifact, and good versus bad, and possibly something about fantasy jargon. And we'll see what else they put in here because it's 10. So, we shall begin reading the paragraphs. Fantasy fiction has evolved quite a bit since the days of The Lord of the Rings. In modern times, it's one of the broadest genres to write in. That said, many works still use the same old themes with little to no variation. Today, I'll cover the 10 most overused fantasy tropes in fiction and what you can do to keep your stories fresh. Okay, so they are going to hopefully say what you can do to keep your stories fresh. And the Avoiding Fantasy Cliches article, they also said something about how to avoid, which was also some ridiculous stuff. You can check that video out and see for yourself if you really think it's ridiculous, as I thought. Anyway, beyond that, we'll also look at some case studies, if you will, where authors have done a great job making their work stand out from the cliches we'll cover. Okay, so I'm finding a confusion here, okay? There's a bit of a confusion about what is a trope and what is a cliche. I feel like a lot of writing articles are confusing these two, and I'm confused as well. I thought a trope was something that if you are looking for a book to read and you like to see, I don't know, enemies to lovers, then you would go and look for a book that has enemies to lovers. And that is a trope. It's like a common thing that people recognize, a common element of a story that people recognize. Cliche, it's just the overused stuff. Isn't that? Wait, are tropes cliches in the same thing? I'm confused. What is it? What's a trope? So if a trope is overused, does that make it a cliche? If a cliche is used in a fresh way, is that just a trope or is that still a cliche? I am confused. So my understanding of trope was that it's just an element of like not just fantasy, but in any genre. There is something called a trope, and then readers who know what they like, I like this kind of elements in the story, and those are tropes. So they would look for the same elements in other stories. because they know that they will enjoy it if it has those elements in it. And those are tropes. Cliches are like, I don't know, what are cliches? My understanding of a cliche is sort of like overused tropes. Wait, are tropes cliches? Okay, I'll stop rambling. Let's see. Where were we? I'll also provide some, we're right here. I'll also provide some basic writing exercises to get you into the grove of thinking outside the box. And lastly, I'll give you a list of resource recommendations you can follow up on to make your work fresh. So without further ado, let's get into the most overused tropes in fantasy. Okay, he says, the cliches we'll cover, and then let's get into the most overused tropes in fantasy. So I'm not wondering if overused tropes are cliches. Table of contents, we're not going to go over that. Top 10 most overused fantasy tropes. First, well, it's not first, actually, they're going in reverse order. Okay, magical schools is 10. The magical school trope. The main character attends some academy where they learn or hone magic powers. Often they'll have had some clue that they weren't like everyone else, and suddenly everything makes sense when they learn about their abilities, and it's a safe bet that some popular, more talented practitioner takes issue with the new kid. Shout out to J.K. Rowling for putting the magic school trope on a worldwide scale. There are other works like Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea series, for example, that predate Rowling's work, but Hogwarts and Harry Potter certainly put it in the spotlight. Hold on, they're just introducing them. They're introducing them. They're not telling us how we can make it fresh yet, okay? Or hopefully they'll do that later on. That's what we're hoping, right? They're saying it's overused. When I say the word overused, it has sort of a negative feel to it. Connotation, is that how you say it? Negative feel to it. So, you know, you could say overused, you know, it has a negative feel to it. You could say well used, and that has a more positive feel to it. Interesting. So now I'm assuming that they find these negative, but maybe that's just my interpretation. Medieval settings is number 9. Number 9, medieval settings. To many, fantasy is synonymous. Fantasy is cinnamon. Synonymous sounds like cinnamon. I like saying cinnamon. Fantasy is cinnamon with the medieval-inspired fantasy world. Okay, you've got castles, blacksmiths, kings and queens, combat with sword, shield, and bow, and lots of my lord and thou. I've never seen thou. Okay, are there some fantasy books in medieval settings that use thou? Thou shall not pass. Was that a thou? I can't remember. I think it was you shall not pass, right? I think so. Or was that just in the movie and not the book? I don't know. I haven't read the books of Lord of the Rings, actually. Actually, when I first watched the movie of Lord of the Rings, I didn't know that it was originally a book. I didn't know at all. I didn't know. While you can undoubtedly be highly creative within these worlds, they're almost inescapably ingrained in the genre. Okay. If you're a fantasy writer, don't be afraid to explore modern-day settings where fantasy and magic exist within everyday life. There's also steampunk and post-apocalyptic fantasy, which can feel fresh compared to a medieval setting and are no less fantasy. So basically, they're implying that in the year 2024, there is not a lot of steampunk and post-apocalyptic fantasy. So you better write it, authors. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting here. I mean, but if it works, don't fix if it works. Don't fix what's not broken. Is that what you say? If you're a fantasy writer, don't be afraid to explore modern day settings. I mean, there are plenty of urban fantasy books. Plenty, I'm sure. I just don't read them. Have I read any urban fantasy books? Urban fantasy. Urban fantasy. I mean, weren't we just talking about academies and stuff like that? Isn't that not like a little bit different? Post-apoc. I mean, there were all those dystopian novels, dystopian fantasy novels like the Hunger Games and stuff like that. Have you completely forgot about that? Have you completely absolutely forgotten about that? And also all the vampire fiction. Oh my gosh. Have you completely forgot about that era? Living writer. Who was it? Eugene. Eugene, have you forgotten? What is what anyway? Dragons. Okay. Dragons is number 8. And I actually did look through this article a little bit beforehand because I was looking at it for something else and I wasn't thinking of doing a react like this, but I thought, wait. I saw dragons and I thought, wait, I need to react to this because I've never seen dragons as a fantasy trope. I've seen mythical creatures as a fantasy trope, or talking animals, which is kind of like mythical creatures. But anyway, I've never seen dragons being specifically called out. I can understand that it might be seen kind of like a trope, but I don't think dragons specifically is a trope. I think it should be mythical creatures anyway. Subject matter and creatures from various mythology and folklore ultimately define the genre. However, of all the creatures available in all of the world's myths and lore, somehow everyone lands on dragons. Are you writing fantasy? Why wouldn't you add some dragons? Granted, you can have dragons in your work and not be cliche. You must consider that you are drawing from a thoroughly visited well when you do. Depending on your world, consider things like werewolves, vampires, the fae, or best of all, creatures you've created. Don't do dragons by default. What era are you living in, Eugene? There is werewolves and vampires and fae are oversaturated. I would rather see a dragon, actually. I don't want any more fae books. I mean, sorry to the people who are writing fae books, but they're really not my favorite. I want to see like old school, like fantasy quest adventure with dragons and a ragtag group of people, you know, going on some quest or something, and not all this fae vampire werewolf stuff anymore. Like, if you like fae vampire or werewolf, that's fine. That's fine. You can like it. It's fine. But don't hate on dragons. In fact, I think dragons are wanted these days. People want dragons again. And I don't mean dragons in the way of the Game of Thrones type of dragons. I mean, these dragons they're not friendly. They're not going to bind to a human. They are going to be the big boss at the end. Something like that. I'd rather see something like that. Okay, so dragons being overused. I don't know what. Maybe this Eugene person. I'm guessing. Sorry, I got a little bit overexcited with dragons. Maybe this Eugene person does not like Game of Thrones. Maybe. Maybe they don't like Game of Thrones. Maybe they like, I don't know, a werewolf story. But maybe they like werewolves with mates and vampires like Twilight and fae like A Court of Thorns and Roses. Maybe those are their favorite books. And they don't like Game of Thrones, which is fine. You don't have to like it, but just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's an overused trope. That is a weird connection to make. Come on. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting this whole thing, but it seems weird that like everyone lands on dragons. Like everyone, like who are you talking about? There's so much fae out there right now. I would put fae here instead of dragons. By the way, have you ever noticed, you know Aragon? Not Lord of the Rings, don't confuse it with that guy. Aragon, the dragon story. Yeah. Did you ever notice how dragon, like if you take, can't select the, oh, there we go. If you take dragon, you replace the D with an E, you get Aragon. That's definitely how he created it. I mean, come on. People are like, oh, Aragon is such a nice name. Oh, wow. And then I'm like, have you ever really thought about it? A, B, C, D, E, and you change the D to an E, and it's Aragon. I mean, it's not such a difficult naming trick here. You can pretty much do it with anything if you want to. You could read dragon backwards and make a new species too if you want to. It's not such a hard thing. Okay, I don't know what I'm going on about. I want to see dragons, and you can't stop me. Eugene. I just remembered something. Okay, I just remembered something. There was an old, I'm going off on a tangent, hold on. There was an old, I think it was a 2006 or 7, America's Got Talent audition of this guy called Eugene the Librarian. You gotta watch it. It's so good. At the time, I actually thought this was an actual real person, but this is this person's character. Like, this is like the, you know, like some people have like a character that they go by. His name isn't actually Eugene. I forgot what his actual name was, but he's like he's just like an office guy working at an office, and he created this character called Eugene the Librarian. And he takes on this voice and this accent and everything. It's just so funny, but it was also pretty wholesome too. So you should definitely go look up. I think it was 2006 or something, but you don't even have to worry about the year. Just go look up Eugene the Librarian on YouTube and just push through the cringe. Okay, just watch. You have to watch the whole audition to really appreciate it. Push through the cringe. I'm pretty sure he went on there not expecting that he would, go forward. He didn't go forward, just to let you know. But I found out that his friends or something encouraged him to try auditioning for AGT, and then he didn't think he would get on, but he did. So he did a piece. No, it's not AGT. Sorry. Oh my gosh, it's Britain's Got Talent. It's BGT. What am I saying? It's not AGT. Okay, so Eugene the Librarian on Britain's Got Talent. Pretty sure it was like 2006 or something. It's really, really old. There's who was on? Simon's already? Yeah, Simon must have been on there, and Piers Morgan and Cheryl Osborne? Think so. Was it those three? I can't remember. Okay, so anyway. Tangent, big tangent. Sorry, I'm kind of high on coffee right now. Eugene the Librarian on Britain's Got Talent. I don't know why I said AGT. It's not AGT, America's Got Talent at all. I don't know why I said that. That is so weird. It's so weird. I meant to say BGT the entire time. That's so weird what my mouth was saying. Anyway, moving on. Number 7, a forbidden love. The forbidden love trope isn't the most beat to death one in the genre, but it can certainly be predictable if not well done. Mixing your fantasy with romance, horror, or comedy can be a break from the norm. However, star-crossed romances between different species or social classes can be a hard sell if you don't have some good character development, storytelling, or other elements to generally invest readers. Okay, so my mouth is not talking anymore. Sip of coffee. Okay. I wish they would, he gave an example of before, right? He gave an example of a book before, like J.K. Rowling. He gave an example of J.K. Rowling before. I wanted him to give an example here. Like, what book is he talking about when he says star-crossed romances between different species or social classes? If you don't have some good character, like, what book is he criticizing here? I want to know. I think it's fine to put it here, right? I think so. I mean, this is his opinion, right? So I don't know. I don't read, I don't seek out romanticy, okay? I don't seek out romanticy. Um, but if a book I was reading that is fantasy happens to have romance in it as like one of the main drivers, like it happens to have that in it. Like I wasn't looking for it, but it happens to have that in it while the characters are like, I don't know, trying to save the kingdom or something. And that's fine. Um I is forbidden love a trope? Yes. I would say forbidden love is a trope. Um but is it a overused and what he's implying somehow can be a hard sell, like a bad trope? I don't think it's a bad trope. Is it? I don't know. I don't read this kind of genre, okay? Uh Next, 6. The Wise Old Mentor. Next up, we have the wise old mentor trope. Every would-be hero needs a gray-bearded sage to dispense cryptic advice. This sounds familiar to something. I'm saying it sounds familiar because I feel like I read an article that also said that wise old mentor dispenses cryptic advice. I could be wrong, but it sounds familiar when I say it. These seemingly all-knowing mentors conveniently give crucial information piece by piece and come to the rescue with something they likely should have mentioned earlier. At their worst, these characters are often shallow, lack clear or realistic motivations for their actions, and don't add much to the story beyond a convenient way to get particular info across to the reader. Of course, they can be done well, but make sure they're good characters overall and not simply a means to an end. You know, I saw a long time ago about this old mentor trope being criticized, but then someone said to that post or comment or whatever that these old people have lived a long time. Of course they're going to have some advice. And I thought, well, yeah, of course that does make sense. You know, they've lived for a while. So, and you know, maybe they don't have a good memory. I don't know. It's kind of stereotyping old people, but stereotyping the elderly here, but you can't help it. When you get old, your brain just decides to shut off sometimes. It's you can't help it. So maybe they should have mentioned the thing earlier, but they just didn't remember. So it kind of makes sense. I don't know. I just feel like the wise old mentor is fine. It's a trope. It's such a cliche trope, but I like the wise old mentor. I have wise old mentors in my stories, okay? I even have a wise old mentor that appears as cameos in many books. So, actually, wait, do I have a wise old mentor in my debut novel, Between Roses? I don't think I do, actually. I was going to make one character a wise old mentor, but then he turned out to be not very nice. So then I thought, okay, well, now I don't have a wise old mentor. Huh, I don't have a wise old mentor in that story, huh? I actually never thought about that. I do have wise old mentors in other stories, but not this one. I like the wise old mentor trope. Doesn't always have to be a gray-bearded sage. It can be an old woman, too. It could be a grandma. Next, magical artifact. Okay, I thought this might appear here. As I showed you the Avoid Fantasy Cliché writing article that I did earlier, magical artifact was actually the fourth one on the list. There are 5. It was the fourth one on the list. This one falls into a few subcategories. There's the underwhelming character made interesting by their magic sword, the powerful trinket that doesn't actually matter because it turns out it was the journey that mattered all along, and perhaps the worst, the plot hole pendant, which only works when the plot demands it. Need to escape from certain death? The pendant activates just in time, convenient, resolving any tension or conflict, creating an unsatisfying storytelling outcome. To avoid the pitfalls that come along with this trope, develop the object's powers and limitations in a way that adds depth and complexity to your narrative. By treating the thing as an integral part of your story rather than a convenient solution to problems, you can ensure that its presence feels meaningful and enriches the overall storytelling experience. They actually gave an advice here. I was not expecting that. Because so far they haven't been. Okay. Well, you know what? I can't be critical about magical artifacts because I like them. And if I like them, they are going into my story. So, underwhelming character made interesting by their magic sword. What book are you talking about? Tell me. Powerful trinket that doesn't actually matter because it turns out it was the journey that mattered all along. Tell me what book you're talking about there. And the plot hole pendant, which only works when the plot demands it. You need to tell me what book you're talking about there, too. Because I don't know. And that doesn't help. It's not helping just saying these, giving these subcategories without giving some examples of books that have it. It's okay to be critical of books. You don't have to always hype them up and be like, oh yeah, J.K. Rowling, widespread academy trope, yay. It doesn't have to be like that all the time. These writing articles, I don't know, maybe they feel like they can't be critical about books, but I think they should be critical about books. I mean, they're trying to teach newbies, aren't they? Isn't that the whole point of these articles? They're trying to teach newbies so they can be critical of other works. It's fine. I think so. Don't you think so? So I like the magical artifact trope, and I'm not going to stop using it. I like reading about them too. I don't know, it's just something nice. It's nice to have some solid thing to look at. Okay, Damsels in Distress. This was the third one on their avoid writing cliches thing, so I was, yes, expecting this. What's more inspiring than a helpless princess waiting for her knight in shining armor? The main problem with this cliche is when the writer asks the reader to bite on the trope itself. Instead of developing the characters beforehand to where the reader legitimately cares about what's happening. What book are we talking about? Can you tell me? There's also the issue of the inevitable happy ending. Captivating your audience will be tough if they start to feel that, despite the hardships and trials, the lady locked in the tower was never in danger. If you use a rescue mission in your plot, develop your characters well, and don't leave your princess helpless and useless. Even if they're incapable of helping themselves with any success, you can be sure that someone in their shoes would still try to improve their situation with more than a woe is me and a devout confidence that their beloved will burst through the door at any moment. Well, what book are we talking about? And I feel like he's taking a jab at Disney films, but you're what? What was this article supposed to be for? Hold on. Let's see. This article is, let's see, introducing the top 10 most overused fantasy tropes in fiction and what you can do to keep your stories fresh. Is this, I mean, in some like old school fantasy novels, you do maybe see this trope, but I don't know if I've seen them recently. And especially in the sort of Disney movies, the old Disney movies, like, I don't know, Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is a big one, I suppose. Beauty and the Beast is a little bit different. Let's see, Snow White, maybe. Although she does run away. Cinderella, bit, maybe. Yeah, it's a lot of that, isn't it? Like, Sleeping Beauty is a big one, isn't it, though? You know, it's like, it's not that she doesn't try to do anything, but she doesn't really try hard enough, maybe. I don't know. But it's just a Disney movie. You have to forgive Disney movies. I mean, oh, it's a yawn. It's a yawn. It's a cloudy, sleepy day today. Okay. Well, I mean, what do you want us to do with this? What do you want us to do? You want us to write like a Pixar Rapunzel? Is that what you want us to write? Let's see, unexpected intervention. This is an interesting one. I haven't seen this one before. Okay. The divine intervention trope, also called a Deus Ex Machina. Oh, wait, I've seen this one. The Deus Ex Machina, I've seen, they didn't call it the unexpected intervention, but I looked at an article called the 21 Popular Fantasy Tropes or something like that. It's the first video of this channel, actually. And I think they have this one in there. Is a get out of jail free card for many fantasy writers. Why bother when you can have sudden, improbable divine intervention instead? His weapon is damaged to resolve his waiting, countless enemies surround him, your lovable character is about to meet his untimely demise, and nothing can save him unless, yes, there is, in the sky, voila, the seemingly impossible becomes possible. Unless you're careful with what you divine as possible for your world, these tricks can feel very cheap and unrealistic and undermine the tension you work to create. If you want to use these tropes well, foreshadowing is your friend. Suddenly they're giving advice. Planting subtle hints or clues throughout your story can lead to the eventual intervention, helps make the resolution feel earned rather than arbitrary. This not only enhances the believability of the Deus Ex Machina, but also maintains the integrity of your storytelling by ensuring that the big moment is satisfying and earned. Okay. All right. That wasn't too bad. All right. I feel like, do these people edit their articles? I feel like they end towards the end. Maybe their mind started working and they started adding more advice. In the beginning, they didn't do that much. I don't know. Number 2, the Dark Lord. Dark Lord. I've not seen this one in their previous one, but I have seen the Dark Lord come up a lot as a fantasy trope. You won't find a list of most overused fantasy tropes without this one, the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord is a cackling villain bent on world domination, often just for the love of evil. Don't get me wrong, you need an antagonist and genuine conflict to drive your plot. However, your bad guy should have some clear motivations to explain their actions, give them some backstory, a goal they want to achieve, the reason they want it, and the means they use to obtain it. Furthermore, consider giving them some redeemable quality as well. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to give them redeemable qualities as well? Why can't a villain just be a terrible bad villain? Okay, let's see if they say anything. If you do opt for the bad to the core villain without redeeming qualities, yes, that's what I want. Be sure to make them really dastardly. If you're going to sell the epitome of evil idea, they're going to have to do something more deplorable than burn the local village to the ground. I think burning the local village to the ground while the residents are still inside it, including the women and children, is a pretty villainous, evil thing to do without thought. What more do you want? Seriously, what more do you want? It's like, I mean, think about it. Yeah, like when you're a writer, you just write, oh, the villain, he burned the village to the ground. And you're like, you just write it. But when you really think about it, it's an entire village filled with people, filled with families and women and children and disabled people and sick people and old people and pets and everything burned to the ground. That is pretty evil when you think about it. It's an entire village. Come on. I mean, what more do you want? What is more deplorable than burning a local village to the ground? What is more deplorable than that? I mean, you're killing people. I mean, that's pretty deplorable, I think. Was it okay to say killing people? I think it's okay to say it on video. I'm not talking about actually doing things like that. I'm just talking about fantasy tropes, okay? Cut me some slack. The Chosen One. Okay, this was the first one on their last one. This is the first one on this one. Of course, you're not going to see... Well, actually, there was one fantasy trope article that I found that it mentioned the Chosen One, which was odd. But it was a different flavor of fantasy trope article. It was about fantasy tropes that we love So that might be an interesting one to look at too. Okay, here we are. The number one most overused trope in fantasy, the chosen one. The protagonist is born with a mark or sign and foretold by an ancient prophecy, which designates them as the world's savior. This prophecy is often vague and conveniently guides the protagonist through their journey without much struggle or personal growth. I don't know about that. This is often accompanied by an infallible morality too. The chosen one is inherently good and morally righteous, without flaws or complexities to their character. They always make the right decisions and are never tempted by darkness or doubt. This leads to a one-dimensional, predictable character arc. I mean, what book are you talking about? I've definitely seen chosen ones that are flawed. Speaking of predictability, if the prophecy is overly specific, it can leave little room for interpretation or deviation from the from the expected outcome. This lack of ambiguity removes tension and suspense from the story, as readers already know exactly how events will unfold. So keeping that in mind, have well-rounded, well-developed characters and strike a balance between inevitable events and narrative twists. Okay, so that is that. But I don't think, you can't just have well-rounded, well-developed characters and strike a balance between inevitable events and narrative twists. You can just write that. You can just write that and just be done with it. Writers, do with that what you will and just be done with it. I'm doing hand gestures and you can't see me. I don't think this is good practice for these articles to just say, oh, just do this. Okay. Without it going in further explaining about what exactly they mean. What is a I can't say it. Oh my gosh. W words and R words together somehow just completely trip me up. That is why I really wonder why I call my book Between Roses. I struggle to say the title of my own book. Oh my gosh. It sounds fine in my head. Well-rounded. Well-rounded. But what is well-rounded? What is it? Tell me. Well-developed. What is that? Tell me. What does it mean to strike a balance between inevitable events and narrative twists? How do you do that? You can give this sort of strike a balance between inevitable events and narrative twists. Oh my gosh, I said such a good thing. But no, it doesn't make any sense to someone who is just reading this and they're just reading this for the first time and understanding fantasy tropes for the first time. They're not going to understand what that means. You have to explain a little bit more, or at least write an article about these keywords here: well-rounded, well-developed characters, and strike a balance between inevitable events and narrative twist, and leave a link, and so then the people who are interested can go to that link and read up more about it. At least do that. If you're called a website Living Writer, then maybe you should help writers to live without too much stress. So the chosen one, is saying that it is often unaccompanied is fine, but saying the chosen one is inherently good and morally righteous without flaws or complexities. Saying is inherently good. It's not good to say that something is definitely something. You usually have to say that it's often, because you can't say it's definitely something, because there are plenty of books where the chosen one is definitely flawed. They're not perfect people. If you're going to say the chosen one is always this, then you need to give an example of where it was always that and sort of back up these claims that you're making. But because then people are going to think, oh, the chosen one is always this? What the heck is that? And they always make the right decisions and are never tempted by detriment. You can't make these definite claims. Anyway, it's called bad writing. You can't do that. You have to be careful with what you say. So whatever I'm reacting to this, okay, I'm reacting to this. These are my opinions about these things. So, these are my opinions about these things. However, in like writing, if you're writing like an article, and this is like an informative article, right? You can't say things like, this is always the case, or this is definitely the case, or like all cats like to what did cats do? Like if you say like all cats purr loudly, you can't say that completely, because have you looked at every single cat in the entire world? No, you've just seen a few, and you just notice that those few purr very loudly. So then you think all cats purr loudly. You can't make that assumption at all because it's not true. So you can't say things like that. The chosen one is inherently good and morally righteous without flaws, and they always make the right decision and are never tempted by darkness or doubt. You can't say that is the case across every single chosen one in every single book. You can't say that. Oh my gosh. This article. I mean, I was feeling all ridiculous about the last Living Writer article. I'm feeling very ridiculous about this one too. Come on, Living Writer. If you're providing a writing app, which apparently they are, you could at least make sure that your articles make sense, okay? I mean, I beg you, please. I mean, people are coming to you for help and stuff. And if you make like big claims or wrong claims and stuff like that, and they're going to take it with face value or whatever because they trust you, you know, you have to really be careful what you say, and you have to keep in mind your audience here, because this is different from writing a novel. You're not writing a novel, you're writing an informative article, okay? I really beg of you, writing websites, please be better. I beg of you. Oh my gosh, I looked at so many. Let's move on. Okay, this video is getting too long. Novels that break fantasy cliches. Okay, so now we're getting into novels that break fantasy cliches. Finally, they're giving some examples. I mean, they should have done that earlier. They should have done that earlier when they were giving all the tropes, okay? So now we're talking about, look at this. We're talking about cliches all of a sudden. I thought this was the top 10 tropes. So now we're talking about cliches. That's why I'm so confused. I think this article or some article should link back to another article or whatever you want to do. Somewhere, define trope and cliche for us, please. Give a clear definition of what you mean by trope and what you mean by cliche, okay? I think that's very important to do, especially if you're going to use them interchangeably like this without explaining. Am I being too hard on these articles? I don't feel like I'm being too hard on these articles. I mean, people come to these articles for help. I want those people to not end up like in a stuck position, because I've ended up in stuck positions because of certain writing advice and certain writing articles, and then I just stopped going to them because they were not helping me at all. In fact, they were hindering me. So I'm like, so that's kind of like why I started this channel. I don't want people, newbie people, or even any person to like become hindered because of something a writing advice article said, which could have potentially be a wrong thing to say, and you know, and then the writer gets hindered, and I don't want that to happen. Well, let's get into the examples. All right, let's see what you got to say. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I am going to mispronounce many of these names, okay, just letting you know. Trope, magical school. Now this needs to be bolded. This T needs to be bolded. That's a small thing, but it stands out to me. I can't help it, okay? While magic schools are a common trope, Rothfuss's... oh my gosh, how am I supposed to say this name? Oh, and there's so many S's at the end. Look at this. How am I supposed to? Look at this. Look at this. Say it. Say it with me right now. Rothfuses. I'm not someone that has a lisp. What is going on? Rothfuses. I am having so much trouble with this name. The Name of the Wind stands out for its detailed and immersive world building. The University of Magic in Rothfuses. I am giving up on this. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble saying this name. Rothfuses story. Damn. Is rich with unique lore, complex characters, and a rigorous system of magic that adds depth and authenticity to the narrative. If you're looking for magical school done right, look no further. No, you're not saying anything about the magical school. You have to say something about the magical school if you're going to give an example of this magical school. If you're going to give this example, okay. How University of Magic in this guy's story is rich and unique with lore. I mean, you can make these whole big claims. You can say, oh, this story is rich, unique with lore, complex characters, and rigorous system of magic that adds depth, authenticity to the narrative. Sorry, I'm being kind of sassy today. This is just so ridiculous. I mean, how is it rich? How is it unique lore? Tell me, how are the characters complex? What makes this magic school different and make you love this magical school compared to... What did they say about magical school? They say about magical schools in some academy, they'll have had some clue that they weren't like everyone else, and suddenly everything makes sense and they learn about their abilities and blah, blah, blah. So I'm guessing that none of that is seen in this Name of the Wind book. But you need to explain to me exactly how you don't see these sort of things. Exactly what do they do differently? I want to know. I mean, this is not saying anything. This is just giving you very vague review of the book. It's not saying anything. Okay. The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. I actually have this book in my TBR. Medieval setting trope. The Lies of Loch Lamora is set in the city of Camor, a vibrant and gritty medieval-inspired world that feels fresh and original. Okay, how does it feel fresh and original? Tell me. I mean, there's so many gritty and medieval-inspired worlds. How does it feel fresh and original? Tell me, elaborate, please. Eugene Doak or Doak or whatever you say your name. Please elaborate what you mean by it feels fresh and original. Please do that. Oh my god, sorry guys. This is just so ridiculous. I mean, come on. I mean, there's only 2 sentences in this little section here. I mean, if you're going to write a lengthy article, at least go all the way. Lynch's meticulous attention to detail, intrigue, and political maneuvering elements bring new life into the classic medieval setting. Give more examples. I mean, I know you don't want to give spoilers, but I'm pretty sure you can give examples of, like, the medieval-inspired world without giving spoilers. I'm pretty sure you can do that, especially if you have read the book. I'm pretty sure you can do that. If I read this book, I am going to do that. I'm going to tell you if this medieval world, how this medieval-inspired world might be different than other sword-wielding, other medieval-inspired worlds. Okay, I will do that if I read this book. I don't know when. The Lies of Loch Lamora has been on my TBR for like an eternity by this point. I have so many books waiting to be read. Okay, Seraphina by Rachel Hartman. Seraphina. Trope is dragons. Is dragons a trope? I don't think. How can dragons be unique, you ask? Yes, I asked that question. Seraphina offers a different take by exploring their integration into human society rather than portraying them as mere beasts. Hartman's dragons possess complex personalities, cultural traditions, and political dynamics. In other words, the dragons are meaningful characters in the story. Well, what about the Game of Thrones? Aren't dragons playing a role? I only read the first book, by the way. But don't dragons play a pretty big role in that story? Also, please consider How to Train Your Dragon. Please consider that story. I know it's not a book, but it is it takes dragons to a whole different level. I mean, you could have brought that up. I mean, why not? It's still a fictional story. Yes, it's a movie, but it's a fictional story. You could bring that up, maybe. But you need to talk a little bit more about it. Who's this? Complex personalities, like cultural traditions, like political dynamics, like. I mean, give me some more stuff here. I need more, please. Please, please, Eugene. Please. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book is actually one of the books that I will never read. I made a video that is titled, I think, Books I Will Never Read, or Books I'm Never Reading, or something like that, and you can go check that out. Telling you why I'll never read it. I'm just not interested. Basically, that's what it is. So the trope is forbidden love. The Song of Achilles is a phenomenal book highlighting how impactful the forbidden love story can be. It reimagines the challenging romance between Achilles and Patroclus from Greek mythology. Miller's lyrical prose and nuanced portrayal of the relationship transcend typical romance tropes, delving into themes of sacrifice, honor, and the human condition. I'm pausing because nuanced portrayals of their relationship transcend typical romantic tropes. Maybe you can tell me what the typical romantic tropes are, because I am unfamiliar, or at least have like a link to typical romantic tropes, so that if I'm curious about what you mean by typical romantic tropes, I can go to that article. I think it's important that you do that. If you're going to make these sort of typical romantic tropes, is also a claim. So you should elaborate on this. And if you don't want to do it in this article, you should do it in another article, okay? Please. Delving into themes of sacrifice, honor, and the human condition. I mean, that's a little bit more specific, so it's not too bad. It gives me a little bit of a sense, but because I don't know what typical romance tropes are, I mean, I know some of them, but not a lot of them, because I just don't read romance. I don't read it. Don't assume, Eugene, that everyone who reads this article has read a romance novel, or a romantasy novel for that matter. I mean, you need to be more specific here. I mean, it's not too hard, is it? It's another article, and you probably get paid writing these articles anyway, so it's more content for you. Do they get paid? I don't know. I'm assuming that they get paid to write these articles. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. The trope is the wise old mentor. I've never actually heard of this book before. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. It's probably well known. I just haven't heard of it. In The Eye of the World, Robert Jordan subverts the wise old mentor with the character Moiraine Damodred. Moiraine is a powerful, enigmatic Aes Sedai. What the heck? What the freaking heck? What is that? Who guides the young protagonist, but her motives and agenda remain mysterious, adding complexity to her role within the story. Just because her motives remain ambiguous. We're going back up. Wise old mentor. Gives more stuff to this. At their worst, these characters are often shallow, lack clear, realistic motivations. If they lack clear motivations of their actions, isn't that the same as being mysterious? I am confused. What are you saying? I am confused. And you are assuming that people know this book, and you were assuming that people know what an enigmatic Aes Sedai is. I don't know. So maybe you can speak in more general terms or something. I don't know. This entire article needs to be rewritten. Next, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The trope is the magical artifact. Tolkien's The Hobbit features the Arkenstone. Does it? Yeah. Okay, yeah, it does. I had to remember because I didn't read the book, but I did watch the movie, so. A legendary gemstone coveted by dwarves and central to the plot. The Arkenstone symbolizes greed, power, and the corrupting influence of material wealth, offering deeper thematic and symbolic resonance to the story. If you've never read The Hobbit, highly recommend it. Okay, I've never read The Hobbit, and I don't think I will. Actually, will I? I don't know. Maybe when I have no other books to read, which is going to be a while. The Arkenstone symbolizes greed, power, and corrupting influence of material wealth. It's more, so they're saying that the magical artifact is not entirely magical, but it offers more of a philosophical, has a philosophical meaning attached to it. Is that inherently unique of magical artifacts? I mean, yes, there are magical artifacts that are just magical and will just save the day, but aren't there magical artifacts that have like a more deeper meaning into the story? Isn't that what most of them are like? I'm trying to think. I feel like there are things like that. Trying to think. Magical artifact. Have I ever? You know, there's a difference in like magical artifacts that appear in middle grade stories and middle grade fantasy, and magical artifacts that appear in more like young adult or adult fantasy. The young adult or adult fantasy magical artifacts tend to be, I think, a little more like have a theme or have a little more of a philosophical meaning, something to do with life or something like that. And the middle grade fantasy ones tend to be more like the magical item that saves the day. And that's fine. Oh, magical artifact. Yes, there was a, what was it, like a wizard staff or something like that. I can't really exactly remember what it was. Wand? Was it a wand? I can't remember what it was. Okay, I just remember it was some kind of staff or something that appeared in, let me tell you the book. It's a middle grade book, but the Stormkeeper's Island trilogy, there was a magical artifact, and oh yes, it did actually have a kind of a deeper meaning to it, a little slightly different meaning to it. It is middle grade fantasy, but it while it was something that could potentially save the day, it was also something that symbolized like independence and becoming a leader and ownership of power or something like that. It was like there was like other things surrounding it, other meaning to having that artifact. So it's not an entirely unique thing, I think, with magical artifacts to be different in this way, but anyway. I feel like magical artifacts, there's just different types of magical artifacts. It's not that the magical artifact is typically like the one that saves the day and nothing else, because they didn't give any examples of where it just does that. I can't think of any. Doesn't it usually have something attached to it, something else attached to it, other than being the magical thing that saves the day? Okay, the next one is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Trope is the Damsel in Distress. Uprooted avoids the cliches of the Damsel in Distress trope by featuring a resilient and resourceful protagonist, I'm not going to read that name, who rescues her friend from captivity on her own terms. Wait. Okay. Novik's female lead subverts the traditional dynamic. Wow, how? Tell me how. Tell me how exactly. A resilient and resourceful protagonist who rescues her friend from captivity on her own terms. On whose own terms? I'm confused. Does she rescue her friend from captivity? Her friend is in captivity. On her own terms is whose own terms? The friend's own terms or the protagonist's own terms? I am confused. How is it that this main character is the damsel in distress? Because it sounds like her friend is the damsel in distress. I'm confused. I haven't read Uprooted. Not interested particularly. But yeah. Anyway, this is very a confusing sentence because there's two she's, and the friend could also be a she, but we don't know. I don't know. So maybe this could be expanded a little more. Next one is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. How many examples do we have in here? Do we have an example for every single trope? Is that what you did? Trope is Deus Ex Machina. I don't know why I say it like that. In truth, Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I think I actually have this book in my TBR. Yeah, I think I do, yeah. Skillfully avoids resorting to Deus Ex Machina moment more than it uses well. Huh? What? Skillfully avoids resorting to Deus Ex Machina moment more than it uses well. I have no idea what that sentence is. The book incorporates elements of magic with incredible realism to blur the lines between reality and fantasy. At the same time, the narrative features incredibly fantastic elements. What? Okay. It says the book incorporates elements of magic with realism to blur the lines. And then, at the same time, it has fantastical elements. But you just said it has fantasy in it. So doesn't that mean it has fantastical elements? That's a weird sentence. Don't be weird. But by maintaining narrative coherence and thematic integrity throughout the story, it doesn't need to... Huh? What? Hold on a moment. Hold on. I'm tripping up. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. But by maintaining narrative coherence and thematic integrity throughout the story, doesn't need to call on the angels, so to speak. And relying on those moments is what you want to be doing most of the time. This whole entire thing does not make sense to me. Am I just tripping up? Guys? But by maintaining narrative coherence and thematic integrity throughout the story, doesn't need to call on the angels, so to speak, and avoid relying on those moments. We're relying on what moments? What moments are we relying on? The narrative coherence and thematic integrity, is that what we're relying on? Is what you really need to explain a little bit more here. This needs some clearing up of the sentences because I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand. I just don't. It needs some clearing up. Come on. All right, only two more stuff. All right. We did go through every single trope. They should have put these examples under the tropes, having it mixed up, having it like separate. I have to keep going back up, and I'm doing hand gestures. I have to keep going back up. I have to be scrolling up to see and remember what you said. I think it's good if you have it together. It makes the reading a little more easier and think, oh, that is the example you're giving. Oh, yes, it's good to see examples and see some suggestions based on those examples. This was very nice. I think you should have done it like that, Eugene. The name Eugene might be coming out in my dream. I'm saying it so much. The Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. The Dark Lord trope. You should have put them together. I am sure you should have taken this example of the Dark Lord trope. I'm scrolling up, and you should have put it right underneath this paragraph here, right underneath it where it says local village to the ground. You put it right underneath that. We get an example of someone that is not following the trope in the way that maybe it was traditionally meant to be followed. I don't know. Or whatever you're saying up there. Whatever you're saying up there is not doing. Okay. You should have... This is organized in such a weird way. Oh my gosh. In the Broken Earth Trilogy, N.K. Jemisin reimagines the concept of the Dark Lord by blurring traditional notions of good and evil. The antagonistic force, the Guardians, is a complex and morally ambiguous threat rooted in societal oppression and injustice. Evil? Perhaps. One-dimensional? Not at all. And that's the goal. I know maybe he's trying not to put in spoilers, but I think you can talk about these things without being spoilery. It's complex, morally ambiguous threat. But, like, how exactly does it, like, if you're saying it subverts the Dark Lord trope, how exactly is it? Like, are you saying that this antagonistic force is a gray character? Because if that's what you're saying, that you need to say that, and then you need to explain what you mean by gray character. Gray character is usually someone who is morally ambiguous, by the way. They, like, do a bad thing, but then they also do a good thing. And then they do a bad thing, but with, like, a, like, good end goal. Like, their goal is, like, to save the species, but to get there, they're, like, save their species, but to get there, they're, like, I don't know, destroying the entire universe. Which is bad. But what they're trying to do is like, wait, but I kind of understand. They suffered for so long. Their species was being discriminated against, and they suffered for so long, and now they're finally getting their revenge. But on the other hand, they're killing the entire universe. So that's not good. But I kind of understand them. That's kind of like what a morally great character is. Or like they are evil and they're like destroying the protagonist, but then at some point they like help them. And you're like, wait, but you're evil. Why are you helping me? I don't understand. But then they go back being evil. It's like, just because I did this doesn't mean, then you get a great character. Okay, and then they can be like a little bit complicated and interesting to follow. I went on a weird tangent there, but I like great characters. I write great characters most of the time. Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Trope is the chosen one. Of course, because we're going in order. I should have put those back up there in the parts where they talked about the tropes. The Chosen One. Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series introduces Vin, a reluctant chosen one with a mix of magical abilities. Rather than fulfilling a preordained destiny, Vin's journey puts them on a path of personal growth and self-discovery that so many chosen ones lack. Give me examples of chosen ones that are lacking personal growth and self-discovery. Give me examples of that. I mean, even Harry Potter had some interesting self-discoveries and growths and stuff. So, I mean, what you talking about? You need to back up your claim if you're making these claims of personal growth and self-discovery that so many chosen ones, on quotes, lack. You really need to explain, okay? Please. Oh, and they give some writing exercises. How long is this thing? Oh my god. I'm just going to breeze through this, okay? You can read this article yourself, because I'm going to put the link in the description as always, so you can check out. They give some creative writing prompts. Non-traditional dragon. Write a story where a dragon is not a fearsome and tame, but misunderstood creature seeking friendship. This is How to Train Your Dragon. This is exactly How to Train Your Dragon. This is exactly that story. Original world building. Creative fantasy science inspired by non-Western culture incorporating. I mean, I know you're saying Western culture. Okay, there's a lot of Western cultures. It's not just Europe. Okay, maybe you say non-European culture, because medieval settings often European culture. What about a fantasy setting in, ancient American culture? When the states were first being created. Well, why not that? Why not then? So putting Western all in like one little clump, and saying non-Western, I don't think you need to say that, but anyway, that's you. That is you. A reluctant hero. Write a story where the protagonist is thrust into the hero against their will. A reluctant hero is a trope, by the way. I've seen it in trope articles. So, I don't know what world you're living in, Eugene, if you seem to think that this isn't being done, but it is being done, I'm pretty sure, if it's being talked about in trope articles. Trope articles that predate this article, by the way. That 21 Fantasy Tropes, that was 2023, I think. This is 2024. Or was it 2022? I think it's 2023. Or was it 2021? I actually don't remember. But I know it wasn't 2024, okay? That 21 Fantasy Tropes article, that the first one I looked at, that was quite recent, but it was before this year. The Unconventional Quest. Craft a tale where the quest for a legendary artifact takes an unexpected turn. I mean, don't all quests take unexpected turns? They redefine their goals. Doesn't this always happen? No? Wait, what? I mean, yes, you can do that. You can do these things. You can do these things. These are fine. It's just I have a problem with him like implying that these aren't being done. And so you should do them because they're not being done at all. Is the sort of impression I'm getting from this article. A living landscape. Imagine a world where the landscape itself is alive with sentient forest talking mountains and oceans that hold ancient wisdom. Write a story where characters must navigate this dynamic environment. And this is an interesting idea. Sentient forests like in what? Lord of the Rings? You can do this, yes. It's an interesting idea. Not saying this isn't like answering to any particular like trope that you just talked about. It's just one of your interesting ideas. So fine, you can do that. Fine. Character building. Develop a protagonist who defies the typical traits of the chosen one. Challenges stereotype of wise old mentor by giving them backstory, personal struggles you need to approach the teaching. Okay. All right. Whatever you say. Plot development. Outline a plot that subverts expectations related to Dark Lord trope. Why not? I mean, I know you're choosing these like the chosen one, the wise old mentor, to talk about character building, plot development, setting exploration, dialogue practice, and conflict resolution and stuff like that. But like, you don't have to just pick these ones. You know what I mean? It can be any trope. You can talk about the Dark Lord trope in the character building. I mean, why not? No one's stopping you. So, like, I don't like it when writing articles tell you to, like, do things. I've mentioned this before. I don't like when writing articles tell you to do things like they tell you to outline a plot. What if you're not a plotter, huh? What if you're not a plotter? You're not, they mean, like, if you trust Living Writer and they tell you to outline a plot, I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But it hinders you because you're not a plotter, you're a pantser. So, I mean, then write a synopsis for the story. I mean, okay, Eugene. If you want to do this, Eugene, you go ahead and do it, Eugene. But, I mean, not everyone is going to want to do this in this specific way. Describe a world and separate, should create a scene. I mean, why don't you list these as suggestions? You know, I'm not even going to go over this. Now suddenly they're talking about revision endings. Revise a scene to add layers of mystery, limitations, or unintended consequences, and mystical items, powers, and stuff like that. Remove cliches and stereotypes within fantasy tropes. Like, I don't know. What are you looking for us to do? This is not a good article. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we came to the end. They gave some writing exercises and stuff like that, but you can read this stuff yourself if you want to. Anyway, so that is the end of this article. I am thoroughly disappointed in Living Writer once again. I don't know if I want to ever react to another Living Writer article if I know that these two articles from two different people are this quality. No, I'm not going to go there again. I'm not going to be upset again. Anyway, that is it for this video. Let me know what you think below of all the stuff talked about and all the stuff I went over. I'm pretty sure this video is extremely long. I apologize for all the different tangents about Britain's Got Talent and Eugene the Librarian coming up, but I mean, I just could not help myself. Also, dragons, please write more stories with dragons. I want to see more dragon stories. Please do that. I will read them. And that is it for this video. Have a lovely day. You will hear me in the next video, and the fox is out.